we like being interviewed.
Interviewing.
Not interviewing. You don't have to carry the conversation. You don't have to think about where it's going, right?
It's always fun being on this side.
Right.
I'm your host, Jeff Zart. We're going to take you behind the scenes with the craft distillers who are pouring their heart and soul into crafting the next version of America's spirit. This is the Great American Whiskey Cookers.
Welcome to this edition of the Great American Whiskey Cookers. We are here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm sitting with Kenny and Ryan at Pursuit Spirits, and we are having a conversation about how you guys got started. So we're sitting here up in your office, even though we're in a big warehouse. Your
office / recording studio. Back end everything.
Yeah, so the recording studio is behind us. That's kind of our backdrop, right? And your office is right in front of us. Kirk is barely almost standing on bottles behind the camera. So let's talk about it. We're drinking some of your guys' whiskey. So how did you guys get to whiskey? Where do you come from? I know that you're from Bardstown.
Correct.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, so I grew up in Bardstown, Kentucky, which is the bourbon capital of the world. My dad was a machinist. He did a lot of tool and die repair for the different distilleries. My uncle also made the Knob Creek boxes, Booker's boxes.
So, the wooden box.
Yeah, the wooden boxes. And a lot of family members just work in the industry my whole life, and no one cared about it. But I could kind of see this trend of people starting to care about it. I was wanting to start a podcast on something because I saw podcasts. This was back in 2014, 2015. I saw that they were becoming more popular, something that you can listen to on demand, a category or topic that you're interested in. And I saw a lot of interest in bourbon. So I met this guy at a derby party. So obviously we're in Louisville with...
and you say derby party, that means...
Kentucky Derby.
Kentucky Derby, yes. So, every first Saturday of May is the Kentucky Derby here. And I would throw these really fun, raging kind of...
They're ragers. This is pre-kids.
This is pre-kids.
For all of us.
So neither of you had kids.
No.
You're freshly married, right? And
Ryan was in his DJ stage still.
I was trying to be a DJ. I was learning. So I had all the turntables, fog machines, and all the different lights and all that stuff. So we'd have just one big blowout party. And my wife was friends with his wife, and he came over one derby party, and he brought his own mint julep mix. And I tried it, and I was like, holy cow. And then he also brought like a bottle of George T. Stagg. And at the time, this was like in 2012, 2013. A lot of people didn't know what George T. Stagg was. And he brought, I was like, wow, that's a really nice bottle. And so we kind of hit it off, developed a relationship. And then I had this idea of starting a podcast, and my brother-in-law gave me the idea. He's like, well, you're in Bardstown and you know everybody in the industry. Why don't you do a bourbon podcast? And I was like, that's a great idea. And then Kenny is a background in tech. So he was familiar with public speaking and knowing how to like work with computers, because I didn't. And so he was like the perfect partner for me. And we just started in my basement with episode 1, and then went on this pursuit of finding anyone and everyone in the industry that would talk to us about bourbon, from master distillers, blenders, marketing people, coopers, you name it. We've had anyone and everyone in the industry on the show, and really help educate consumers so they can understand when you go to a shelf and see these bottles, like who's behind them, what's behind them, what do they stand for, what's their products. And so that was like a really good formula for success.
And your day job is what?
So I own a lawn care company and a pest control company here in Louisville. So I was in my truck a lot listening to podcasts and stuff, and that's what kind of spawned that idea. Yep.
And your background is in tech, right, Kenny?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? I mean, tech is a big field.
It's a big field. I've done everything from cutting my teeth like anybody in tech does, with desktop help desk repair and everything like that. And then eventually moving into network engineering, then software development, and then doing stuff with inside of what we call developer advocacy or technical marketing. And so that's really where my wheelhouse is. So a lot of it has kind of gone out from the nuts and bolts of day to day, actually having a pager and have to worry about running production applications, but instead working on the vendor side and talking to people exactly like, this is the right way to run them. This is the software that we use to help build them. And this is how we can help enhance your business too.
So do you still have that job?
We still have the job. Yeah, we're still working.
So you guys are both still doing your day jobs, correct?
Yep.
Then you're running Pursuit Spirits,
Correct.
right? And we'll get into that. And you're running your podcast, Bourbon Pursuit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So
80, 90 hours a week it's about average for us.
yeah.
Yeah.
So not a lot of free time.
Not a ton of free. And the podcast, because let's talk about the start of that, right? And where you're at right now. It started in 2014
Yeah.
as just a podcast, right?
Yes.
Yeah. This is like I said, it was Ryan's idea, Ryan's baby. And I'm kind of what you would call a king of no when it comes to it a little bit, because
I'm negative Nancy.
all the time. I'm always the half glass empty kind of person. I get it, but at the end of the day, it also kind of helps dial us back and keep things in reality, because I looked at it and I said, well, there's got to be people that are already doing bourbon podcasts,
Right.
and we went out there and we started listening to some, and I always give a tip of the hat to Mark Gillespie. He's the OG in this, and so he was really the first one to kind of do it and do it well, but he covered the entire span of whiskey, not just inside of bourbon. And the people that were doing stuff inside of bourbon, honestly, I didn't find it very entertaining, and I didn't find it informational. When I listen to a podcast, I want to come away feeling like I learned something or I gained something valuable out of it. And listening to a bunch of guys crack jokes around a microphone while they're sniffing whiskey, it just wasn't my sort of thing that I cared about. So it was my boss at the time. He runs a very successful tech podcast, and where he invites startup CEOs to come on and tell their story. And I said, that's what's missing. We've got to figure out a way to give voices from in the walls of these distilleries and get it to the people that are walking by the shelves and they have no idea about the personalities and the stories and everything like that. Sort of like what you're doing here, but years ago and just in audio only form.
Right. And now your podcast is, where does it rank?
Number one. Hopefully we keep saying number
with
one.
great humility. Number
Number one, obviously. I mean, and to be fair, I'm very competitive, right? And so we're always trying to find new guests, new spins. Like we're not complacent in what we're doing ever. We're always trying to keep one-upping ourselves. And how do we maintain our listener base? How do we find more people? How do we continue to grow this?
Sure.
And it's good. It's like we've had this challenge that we've taken on right from the very beginning, and we've been very successful at it. And now and the cool thing about having the podcast is that it's truly been the marketing engine for everything that we've been doing for inside of Pursuit Spirits.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have this very unique marketing engine, like you just said, to market and promote your barrels and your Pursuit brand, which most craft distillers never have. I mean, that's something that is secondary or not even thought about. They get into whiskey, but then how do they get it to market? And you guys already have a base sitting there to push it to, right?
Yeah, we're one of the first, if not the first, whiskey media people to kind of start their own brand. We kind of got our start doing single barrel picks for other distilleries, for our audience, for our fans, and our fans, found value in what we were picking. They really trusted our palates. Our barrel picks became very popular. They would sell out very fast because we just had, a lot of experience, a lot of relationships with the industry, and we're able to develop our palates and really provide really good barrel picks to our audience. And so that kind of laid the groundwork. It wasn't intentional, but it was just kind of a natural, organic path. Had the podcast, learned from the best in the industry, started doing barrel picks, and then we get this call from a broker, and he's like, guys, you have this amazing platform. Why wouldn't you start your own brand? And we're like, well, it's a great idea. Let's explore that, and so that's kind of how it's all kind of led here. It's just been a passion project that's led us to the next thing. It's not like we sat down 9 or 10 years ago and said, our goal is to start a bourbon brand. Let's start our bourbon podcast.
Let's build the audience.
Yeah.
Let's take the hard way, spend 5 years to build an audience, and then we'll start buying stuff. No.
But then it all makes sense because, if you come out with a product and then you got to go find fans and build those fans,
right.
That's why a lot of money is spent in marketing and in the bourbon game, because you got to go reach out to fans, connect with them. And we were fortunate that we had that great fan base to start with. And now we're just trying to grow that.
So you went from a bourbon podcast, and then you had barrel picks that you did for your members and your supporters, right? And then you get a phone call, hey, why don't you just start a whiskey company? What went through your mind, I mean, truly went through your mind when you got that call and you guys both sat down and thought, we could do this?
I think, honestly, okay, so this is how it at first, because I was the one that took the phone call, and I said, well, tell me more about it. And he said, well, you know, I've got 2,000 to 5,000 barrels in inventory. You can come and select your own barrels. We'll put them in your own label. We'll bottle them, and we'll sell them. And I said, well, okay, well, what kind of barrels do you have? And they said, we got some stuff that's a little bit younger from Kentucky, some very young stuff from Indiana. A lot of stuff we have is aged Tennessee. And immediately we said, nah, we're done.
You guys are Kentucky boys.
Yeah, right. we were just like, we're not even going to go down this path. It's not worth even exploring. And so we kind of almost thought the project was dead. But he said, listen, I'm going to be up there in a few weeks. I'll bring some barrel samples. If you like them, try them, then we'll continue down this path. If not, no harm, no foul. We'll go ahead and just go our different separate ways. Okay. So we ended up meeting them at a bar here called Hell or High Water. Really nice guys, salt of the earth, about the same age as us, so we kind of clicked pretty quickly. And they were just hungry to build a business as well, and so we kind of had this sort of shared passion between there. But they gave us the barrel samples. We didn't try them while we were there, but the very next day, Ryan came over to my house, and this is at the time, you gotta remember, bourbon was still like, it was doing this hockey stick motion. And Fred Minnick had named Henry McKenna the whiskey of the century or whatever.
I remember.
Right. So that was the point where Henry McKenna became unobtainable. But I had my bottle of Henry McKenna, and I said, listen, if any of these samples are as good or as better as Henry McKenna, we're going to do this. And so we went out.
So that's what your base was.
That's what it was.
Henry McKenna.
Right. It was. Yeah. It was a 10-year-old bottled and bond from, of course, Heaven Hill.
And we had his wife blind us on them. So we had her pour.
You had no idea.
We had, I think, 3 or 4 samples, different barrel selections, and Henry McKenna all blind out there. And we sat there and tasted them, and we picked one, and she revealed it. And that ended up being our first release, episode 1 of Pursuit Series. So we started with Pursuit Series, which are cask strength single barrels that we feel are just a really high-end, very high-quality single barrel expression. And to play it off the podcast, because every barrel's different, we call them a different episode.
Sure.
So it was episode 1, then there's a play button on the label, there's show notes to describe the tasting notes of each barrel. So it's a really fun way for us to tie into our beginning of the podcast and do this single barrel private selection under our own label.
And so what was episode 1? Can you reveal what the barrel was?
Oh, I mean, a lot of it was all, here's the thing. It was all from George Dickel. It was all Source Dickel at the time.
And how did, okay.
But that was the thing where we said, listen, we don't even want to get into this. I don't think this is something that we're going to build a business off, not going to do it. But when we tried it, we were like, holy crap, this is Dickel. And that's really what set the precedent for us to actually go and hand select every single barrel that we were going to do for our Pursuit Series, because we knew that it is a very polarizing flavor profile.
Right.
Some people love it, some people hate it, and a lot of people are going like, I don't even know what this is supposed to taste like.
Right.
So when we had to go down there, it was the ultimate barrel pick experience. There would be 60 to 80 barrels rolled out for us, and we would spend 2 days tasting through barrels. And we were super picky. We rejected easily 85 to 90% of the barrels that were rolled out for us. Yeah. Just because we wanted to make sure it didn't fit that flavor profile that people were immediately going to turn their nose away at.
Right. We're talking about 10, 14, 17-year-old barrels that, gosh, I wish we had now. But, back then and I think that's what's cool about everything we do. We don't care about where it's made or who it's from. We just care about flavor. We want to put the best flavor into the bottle, and that's what we got started, and that's what ultimately led, to our small batch product as well.
You do the single barrel, you do episode 1, and then you do episode 2, and you have a number of different episodes that you start putting out. At what point did you decide, you know what, we're going to come out with our own brand, not just a single barrel, episode 1, episode 2, but we're going to make a full-on brand and be a whiskey company.
Yeah, it really wasn't even our call. It was our bottler, our guy that helped start this at the time, and he made us kind of see the light. And he said, listen, guys, these single barrels, they're fun, they're great. As whiskey geeks, we all love single barrels, especially cash strength offerings. Problem is, you can't build a business off that. You can't do anything at scale. You've got to come out with some sort of small batch product that is going to be able to go to market. You can hit multiple places, and you're not just always chasing after the next barrel.
Right.
And to be fair, it's like, it was really good advice. We looked at it and we just had to figure out, well, if we're going to do this, how is ours going to be different than anywhere else? Because it would have been the smarter idea to go and just buy barrels from one distillery or have one type of product, one mash bill, put it in a bottle and put it out there to market, because that's what everybody does. That's the playbook. That's the playbook that works. We wanted to figure out, well, how can we be different? Because at some point, if you're working with all these different places, you're a marketing company. You're not really building anything on the whiskey. And so if we wanted to figure out if we can have our own flavor profile, something that's unique, without us having to go and start our own distillery, that's going to be a $30 million uplift with the distill stuff, wait 6 years, find out it tastes like crap and start all over again.
Right.
And then if we were to just buy it from one distillery, people are going to pick it apart and they're going to go, what makes you different than them over here? So and this is again, before the whole finishing craze took off and everything like that too. So we really looked at it and we said, if we're going to be a true bourbon company, a true bourbon whiskey company, we have to create something that is uniquely ours. And that is really where the concept, where we landed on, of actually blending things together to find a flavor profile that really worked well for us. And since the podcast had taught us that there's so much great whiskey out there, as a part of what you're doing, you find out that there's great whiskey all over the U.S. It doesn't have to be just in Kentucky.
Right.
And we've had the opportunity to try stuff from all over the place. That's why you talk about the bottles that you're stepping on over here. We get bottles sent to us weekly by all these distilleries everywhere because they want you to try their whiskey. And so we know that there's great whiskey all over the place. So if we can find the best of the best, we can combine them to create something that we feel is a great representation of this, what we call united profile, then we can actually build something up there.
Yeah, not only do we want to be different, but we want to be better. And we want to put the best product in the bottle. And we found that just putting one mash bill from, the few distilleries was, one distillery, the same mash bill just wasn't giving us something better. It was giving us the same, and we wanted something better. And that's why we sought out those best distilleries. And that's why we feel like we have a better product on the shelf.
Very cool. Kenny, Ryan, thank you for the discussion. Thank you for the opportunity to sit down with you and learning about just exactly how you guys went from a podcast to starting a business and why you got into it. All right, so where do they find your spirits? Where do they find the podcast?
Yeah, so you can find our whiskey in 12, 13, potentially moving always into different markets. You can go to pursuitspirits.com, find all the information there. There's a store locator on the website. You can also come and visit us here. We've got experiences that run Thursday through Saturday. Everybody loves the whole shebang tour. It's the one that outsells everything 10 to 1.
And the whole shebang, you get to thief and bottle your own bottle, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's everything. You get a tasting, you get a barrel pick experience, you get to fill your own whiskey from the barrel to the bottle and even run it through the bottling line yourself and take it home with you as a souvenir. So it's a one-of-a-kind thing that we developed because since we had started with a barrel picking club, we said there's nothing cooler than whiskey to do. So let's give this opportunity to everybody. Right. So that's the way you can come visit us and get a chance to try our whiskey. Also online, sealbox.com is our online retail partner. But if you want to know more about us, the process, the whiskey industry, everything else that we've started and we've built, you can go and find Bourbon Pursuit wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, you name it. And then since we do hate free time, you can also find Behind the Pursuit, which is another podcast that we started where we talk about building a bourbon brand, what it's like to work with distributors, how to deal with marketing, how to deal with literally everything across the board. You can go and find that as well as a separate feed.
Fantastic. Kenny, Ryan, thank you very much for sharing this. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
This is
Cheers.
super tasty.
Yeah.
You can find us at thegreatamericanwhiskeycookers.com on the socials, Facebook, Instagram. You can hit our website or our YouTube page, step it up and go to Patreon, become a member. We'd appreciate it. Until next time, if you can't be good at it. See ya.
Cheers. I like that. If you can't be good at it.
Yeah.
A lot of bottles that we get sent to like
To taste.
review and taste from everybody. Obviously, we can't get to it all. So like,
Right.
this is the bottles that we try to for whiskey quickies and reviews, and then we have a whole nother room of
I'm sure.
calls and stuff that get sent to us. So we got enough bottles for about 10 pandemics.